Join the conversation. Follow Jason on Twitter. And don't forget to visit the live show fan page on Facebook.
And it makes it almost pointless to watch the news because you're not hearing about any of this stuff. So let's talk about this for a minute. So NATO's seeking troops to deter Russia on the eastern flank, on their eastern flank, so Russia's western front. It says NATO will press allies to contribute to its biggest military buildup on the Russian border since the Cold War as the allies prepare for a protracted quarrel with Moscow. The United States hopes for binding commitments from Europe to fill 4 battle groups of some 4,000 troops. France, Denmark, Italy, and other allies are expected to join the four battle groups led by the United States, Germany, Britain, and Canada to go to Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia with forces ranging from armored infantry to drones. Now, does anybody else see a problem with the countries that are leading the charge? In Europe are the United States, Germany, Great Britain, and Canada. Only one of those countries is even European. And everybody's got their underwear in a twist over Russia. Because why? Russia sent 14 ships from their port around into Syria. And everybody's concerned that Russia's doing this major military buildup. Now, first of all, Russia's broke. They're a poor country. They couldn't sustain they don't have the infrastructure. They couldn't sustain a long, drawn-out war. I think the aircraft carrier that they were using, I was talking with a friend of mine who's familiar with this stuff. He said the aircraft carrier that they sent, he said it's ancient. He said it's billowing black smoke. It's like they're shoveling coal into a fire down there to try and keep this thing going.
Rowing on the side.
Oh yeah, they got the long oars out and they're stroking this thing. And he said they were worried about it breaking down out there. He says it's like it's crawling there. It's the gremlin of the sea, and so it's not like it's this top of the line gear that they're shipping out there. And I look at some of this stuff and I say to myself, well, I mean, what was the real risk here? I mean, they're really worried about Russia invading Eastern Europe. And the truth is, Russia is in part making moves because of moves that NATO is making. Now, again, without coming to the aid of Russia and defending Russia's actions, I just want you guys to understand that in the treaty that we have with Russia, we promised that we would not move NATO troops any closer to the Russian border. And over the last several years, we have been slowly doing that, inching troops closer and closer and closer to the border. Russia, in turn, has responded by moving troops closer to its border. And what is the narrative in the media? Oh, Russia is pushing up against Eastern Europe. Look at Russia exerting its force. And I use the example. And so I listen and I listen to what these guys are talking about. And imagine for a moment if Mexico was a major sovereign power, right? They have a major military. They cooperated with other militaries that tended to work against the U.S.'s interest. And all of a sudden, Mexico, along with their allies, started lining up tens of thousands of troops along the border with the United States. How would we react? I mean, and again, without seeming like I'm coming to the defense of Russia, I just want you to understand that decisions we make have consequences. That we can exacerbate this problem or we can neutralize this problem. And right now, what we're doing is we're playing this chicken game with Russia, where NATO is now saying, oh, we need more troops. They currently have somewhere around 30,000 troops up there. I think they're trying to boost it to 40 or 44,000. Now, they stand in opposition to roughly 300,000 Russian troops on that side, on the Russian side of the border. This is a very dangerous game that's getting ready to get hot. And Russia has decided that it is going to exert its influence, that it is not going to allow its financial interest in the oil and gas pipelines that run through Syria to be jeopardized by a U.S. ousting of another third world dictator. And it, along with Iran, has now stepped in to defend Assad. And they have laid the ultimatum down to America and said, don't come in here. Don't start flying your planes around. Don't start shooting rockets at anti-Assad, at Assad troops, because we're here and we're going to consider that an attack against us. They launched their rickety battle group to work its way around on its way to Syria in order to have a larger presence in the Middle East. Now, if we were doing this, every American would think that this was a completely natural and necessary response in order to combat, the attack that was going against our financial interest of our pipeline running through there. No one would even question it. It would be something that we needed to do to protect ourselves. But when Russia does it, Russia's evil. It's the USSR. It's communism. And therefore, it has to be stopped, and we have to beat them down, and we have to beat them back. Now, guys, I don't know. There may be something here that I am not seeing, and I hate to be the guy who just comes in and rails on American foreign policy all the time. But one of the things that America does not do well is they do not disengage well. They don't recognize the writing on the wall and say, you know what, this really isn't any of our business. What interest do we really have in the Middle East? In Syria? Well, we don't have a direct interest, but Saudi Arabia does. And we're friends with Saudi Arabia, so that means that we've got to protect Saudi Arabian interests or try and influence the region to create a hole for Saudi Arabia to slide through. Because underneath all this fighting and all this talk about the government and what they're trying to do and liberating countries and ousting evil dictators, what it really comes down to is you have the Saudis and those in Qatar who want to have their own pipeline that runs north to Europe. But in order to do that, they got to go through Syria. You have the Russians and the Iranians who already have pipelines that run through there. You have Assad, who favors the Russians and the Iranians over the Saudis.